Royal Yacht Britannia, after a smooth and pleasant crossing from Norway, arrived at Dundee, bringing home the Queen and the Duke. On disembarking, where many royal arrivals and departures have been seen before, the Queen and the Duke were received by Lord Provost Hughes. He bade them welcome to Britain, Scotland and Dundee. The Secretary of State for Scotland, Mr. James Stewart, was in attendance, and the Royal Bodyguard for Scotland, the Royal Company of Archers, was on parade. Factories representing Dundee's most important industries were inspected during the Queen's 6-hour programme in the city. Here, for example, she and the Duke became interested in the fascinating process of marmalade making. Some of the details were explained to Her Majesty by Sir Frederick Wells. There followed a drive past ranks of cheering children offering their welcome home to the Sovereign and her husband. Dundee Royal Infirmary was another place visited. Here, the Queen opened the new radio diagnostic department and examined its impressive technical equipment. When the time came to leave, the British climate had broken out again. Dundonians were out in full force a little later to greet the royal couple at the city chambers, where they took luncheon. In the afternoon at Queen's College, where it rained once more, 4 Dundee medical students took a tip from Sir Walter Raleigh. Removing their gowns, they spread them on the ground for the Queen to walk over. A pleasing touch of gallantry to gild the royal return. We took one of our cameras into the lift of the clock tower in Westminster to report on the extensive repairs which are now in progress. 3 of the clock faces, which are over 22 feet in diameter, will have to be reglazed, so you can see it's quite a job. The minute hands alone are 14 feet long. Big Ben, of course, is the name of the famous bell. 97 years old, it weighs 13.5 tons. And here's the flaw in the casting which gives it that particular tone. A lot of bomb damage will have to be made good, and they've been overhauling the lights, which signify that Parliament is sitting. Our cameraman went to the very top, where the pinnacle is being removed for re-gilding. The whole job will cost £40,000. It's all right for Big Ben getting his beauty treatment, but how would you like to work 320 feet over London? Later in the week, our cameras were again focused on the Thames to record the highlights of Henley Royal Regatta. To judge from the crowd, this event becomes more popular every year. Popular for the spectators and the oarsmen who compete for these splendid trophies. Now let's see how they were won. In the final of the Grand Challenge Cup, the University of Pennsylvania held off the Vancouver Rowing Club and finished in the fastest time ever recorded at Henley. The Russian oarsmen scored one of their 3 victories when they beat the Swiss pair in the double sculls. It's the first time Russia has won this event. In the Diamonds, Rand, the Royal Air Force champion, was unable to answer the challenge from Korczaka of Poland. The Russians were easy winners in the silver goblets, beating Leander by 4 lengths. There was another American victory in the Thames Cup when Massachusetts beat the Royal Air Force crew. American oarsmen have their own way of celebrating. In they go, cocks, crew, coach, the lot. The scene is at the gates at Wimbledon. They want the best standing room and they mean to get it. Princess Margaret and the Duchess of Kent were present to see the Trabert-Nielsen clash in the final of the men's singles. After their bow to the royal box, the match began, with Nielsen serving. Trabert was a clear favourite, but Kurt Nielsen of Denmark had reached the Wimbledon final before. He might pull it off this time. The American, however, had found his very best form in this tournament and soon looked like the winner. Match point came in the third set. This is the final rally. Victory to Tony Trabert, the first man since Donald Budge in 1938 to go through all 7 rounds without losing a set. The Duchess of Kent presented the trophy to the new holder of this coveted Wimbledon title. Next day, the centre court saw Miss Louise Brough and Mrs. Flights, formerly Miss Beverly Baker, come to fight for the women's title. Miss Brough had won it 3 times already and was intent on adding another victory to her record. Mrs. Flights was in no way put off by this record. Her style is unusual, by the way. Instead of a backhand, she changes her racket to her left hand. It was a tough, level pegging match. But now it's match point to Miss Brough at 40-15. Well, what a moment for a double fault. 40-30 and this for it. Louise Brough wins 7-5, 8-6. She too received the trophy from Her Royal Highness, and there was a medal for Beverly, who had indeed made a great fight of it. When the players in the women's doubles came on, one thing was certain: it was bound to be a British win. It was in fact the first all-British match of its kind since 1929. Anne Shillcock was partnered by Angela Mortimer. Spectators watching this final included film stars Stuart Granger and Ava Gardner. They saw Shirley Bloomer, playing with her partner Pat Ward, lose the first set. And when match point was reached in the second, Anne Shillcock and Angela Mortimer won the title at 7-5, 6-1. How satisfactory it is that at least this trophy is in British keeping. This is Movietone. Jeffrey Sumner reporting. Highlights from the British Women's AAA. The 100 yards spotlighted Margaret Francis, number 16. Winning the event easily, she set a new championship mark of 10.8, but it was disallowed as a record because of a following win. Now for the 880. This was expected to be a cinch for Diane Leather, number 2, and everyone hoped she might set a world record. Diane was soon out in front and going like the wind, but it was partly the wind itself and partly lack of pacing in the second quarter that robbed her of record time. She was 1.3 outside it. The 80 meters hurdles brought the 22-year-old Manchester medical student Margaret Francis into the picture again. Beating all competition, and as it happens leaving one rather sad disaster behind her, she won in 11.3. A real Olympic hope, Margaret. For centuries, the Otavalo Indians of Ecuador have been famous for their skill in weaving. Recently, they've been learning up-to-date designs, and after attending outdoor classes in Quito, the capital, their work assumes a new look. The craftsmanship is still first class, but the freshness and originality of design calls for a special display by models wearing Ecuador's latest creations. Items included this attractive lace on the end of a stole, an embroidered blouse. Most attractive, this handsomely sets off the accessories. And a casual dress of hand-woven cotton called red pepper. Certainly they're quickly catching on to the modern idea in Ecuador. The centenary of a famous Dutch exhibition was recently the occasion for a royal opening. Queen Juliana is seen coming to perform the ceremony. There was a surprise in store for her, one of the exhibits being a giant robot. It looked quite alarming, but its function was merely to present a bouquet to Her Majesty. Of course, you never can tell how a robot's going to react. It may have been nerves, but it was most reluctant to release the posy of flowers. It shook hands warmly in the end, however. Ace riders from Britain, Belgium, France and Sweden made up the big field competing in the Motocross Grand Prix at Hawkston Park, Shropshire. The camera gives a good impression of the speed at which these rough riders race across country. Even when the course begins to look something like the Grand National, throttles are kept pretty wide open, yet falls are conspicuous by their absence. In this, the most important scrambling event of the year, the real scramble came near the top of the hill. No matter how good a rider or his bike might be, toll was taken here. Yes, anyone who goes in for this kind of contest is bound to find the truth of the old saying, it's tough at the top. A Grecian temple to Neptune and Ceres has just been unearthed at Paestum on Italy's Mediterranean coast 25 miles south of Salerno. It's an exciting discovery, and archaeologists continue to find treasures that recall the glory of Greece some 2,500 years before Roman civilization. An urn, perhaps like this one, once inspired Keats' famous poem. Yet all these discoveries now being dug up are due to the fact that back in 1944, American GIs rammed the hill with a bulldozer. What behavior to a priceless antique. No doubt the Greeks had a word for it. When German holidaymakers go rafting down the river Isar, they're not content with taking along a few bottles of beer, they take it by the barrel. And what with the hot weather, the carefree occasion, and the sausages, this lot obviously contrived to raise a Teutonic thirst. Yes, it was a boisterous party for Fritz and Herman and the rest, and who cares if the girlfriend never finds her hanky again? But Achtung, even more tricky navigation lies ahead, as the raft goes speeding along. Never a dull moment on the 25-mile trip, with plenty of good German beer and sausages all the way to Munich. At St. Giles Cathedral, Edinburgh, the ceremony of the Thistle. Led by heralds, the procession typified the dignity and tradition of this most ancient and most noble order, which was originally founded by James II in 1687. Knights of the Thistle, following on their way to the chapel, included two who were now to be installed, the Earl of Crawford and Balcarres and Lord Bilsland of Kinrara. Her Majesty is, of course, the sovereign of the order. The Duke was installed in 1953 during the Queen's coronation visit to Edinburgh. The ceremony in St. Giles was a short one, but it was a notable highlight of the royal programme in Scotland. Finally, at Holyrood House, there was Scottish dancing to celebrate the visit of Her Majesty and the Duke. The royal couple spent some time watching the festive scene, the first of its kind to be staged here since the coronation. Later, the Queen and His Royal Highness came out and the dancers were presented. These Holyrood House engagements are unique in the life of the royal family. They provide a special opportunity for the sharing of enjoyment and for the expression of loyalty and affection for the sovereign. This is Movietone. Geoffrey Sumner reporting. Held this year at Nottingham, the Royal is Britain's leading agricultural show. One item on the programme, the attractive parade of dams with their foals, drew applause from the Queen during her visit with the Duke. Hunting was well represented, of course, but I'm afraid this pack couldn't very well find their fox. Livestock exhibits, some of the finest that Britain has to offer, were inspected by Her Majesty. She toured a large section of the show. Incidentally, it covers over 150 acres, and it was a very hot day, about 80 in the shade. Throughout their visit to Nottingham, the royal couple were given a most warm-hearted welcome. Naturally, it goes without saying that a visit to Nottingham implies inspection of the city's most famous industry, lace-making. The Queen and the Duke spent a considerable time watching the processes and talking with the highly skilled workers in one of the factories. A long tradition of beautiful workmanship is evidently well maintained by the lace industry today. The little Welsh town of Llangollen offers a perfect setting for the international musical Eisteddfod. This year there were teams from 22 lands. Here, for example, is a choir from Germany. Dancers included this group from Portugal. A team from Sweden added another traditional note. And folk dancers from Latvia helped to point the wide variety of style and costume. Richard Alberson, a clothing salesman from Rochdale, recently took his vows as a novice in the Buddhist faith. The ceremony took place at the London Temple in Kensington. After retiring to change into one of his 3 robes, which are the only clothing allowed, he lit candles at the altar of his chosen faith. He will leave shortly for Siam, to wander through the country seeking spiritual perfection. His only possessions, his robes, a razor, and a begging bowl. King Paul of Greece, accompanied by Queen Frederica and their children, arrives at Thermopylae to unveil a statue to Leonidas, King of Sparta, who fought a heroic battle here in 480 BC. His heroism has caught the imagination of all succeeding generations. Today he is revered in stone, above the place where he won immortality. The standard bearers weave their intricate patterns in the Piazza del Campo, and the ancient city of Siena recaptures its medieval splendor. It's the day of the Palio, the most dangerous horse race in the world, which originated in the 13th century. Each horse is entered by a ward of the city, and the old feuds flare up as the jockeys fight for position. This year, the winner is the Silkworm District. They receive the Palio, or banner, for the first time in 33 years. Once again, Ullswater features in the news as Bluebird takes to the water for a trial run. Mr. Donald Campbell is leaving nothing to chance at this stage of his project. Not surprising with such a valuable craft, it has cost £25,000 already. This turbojet speedboat is expected to reach something like 200 miles an hour. So these trials are all important before an attempt is made on the world's water speed record. At a dinner given by the English-speaking Union in a London hotel, distinguished guests included Mr. Attlee, who presided, and Mr. Lewis Douglas, formerly American ambassador here. Lady Eden and her husband were the guests of honor. In his speech, the Premier said that 3 principles must be established even before the Big Four conference at Geneva.
We are not prepared to break up NATO. We will not be parted from the United States of America. We will work for the unification of Germany. Some say, I read it in the press very often, hear it elsewhere, that there is a new look in the policy of Soviet Russia. It may be so. I trust it will prove so. But I hope that nobody will accuse us of hanging back if we take a good look at the new look before we pronounce upon it either way.
Following the lead of other members of the royal family, Princess Margaret flew by helicopter to the Royal Aircraft Establishment at Farnborough. The Duke of Wellington and the Minister of Supply were there to greet her. Her Royal Highness saw the famous tree, where Colonel Cody used to tether his machine. Later, in the workshops, the Princess watched a demonstration of the latest guided missile techniques. After being presented with a cigarette lighter, the Princess then saw a display, which embraced half a century of flying development. Helicopters seemed to turn into daredevil dragonflies to thrill the crowd. This Golden Jubilee display at Farnborough shows the triumphs of the past and the possibilities of the future. This is Movietone. Geoffrey Sumner reporting. The Veteran Car Club of Great Britain have been celebrating their Silver Jubilee with a rally for cars built before 1917. Our cameras were at Royal Leamington Spa to watch them go by. Here's a 1910 Jackson from the United States. Built in 1914, this is an ancestor of the modern Ford. Next, the bearer of another famous name, a 6-horsepower Wolseley. Here's film star Genevieve, the 1904 Darroch, which has done a lot to foster the interests of the Veteran Car Club. The event was held in association with the Austin Motor Company, celebrating their golden anniversary. One of the first Austin 7s, this one was built in 1908. By contrast, a glimpse into the future, the first public appearance of the Austin gas turbine car. A service was held for those taking part in the pilgrimage to Glastonbury, the most ancient seat of Catholic devotion in England. This year's pilgrimage is of special note, for it underlines the importance of this Somerset town as a spiritual centre for English Catholics. High Mass was sung by His Grace Archbishop O'Hara. It's hoped to raise enough money to restore the ancient shrine and thereby strengthen those bonds between Glastonbury and the Catholic faith. A gay crowd in Soho Square saw one of the first events of the fair, the waiter's race, a test of skill and endurance with everything in the balance, especially the glasses and champagne. Cameramen were swept away in the rush as the field tore along towards Greek Street. The winner was Mr. Robert Taylor, a real cafe chataway. During this week of festival, the people of Soho aim to publicise their industries and commerce, as well as gaiety and good living. This parade featured many sides of the cosmopolitan life in this dazzling square mile. It's a light-hearted corner of London at the best of times, but just now it's having the time of its life. St Andrews provided the perfect setting for the British Open Golf Championship, and the huge gallery was entertained by all the thrills that go with it. Notes on the course include Brown sinking a nice one, but he failed to make it a Scottish triumph. Locke, who used to make a habit of winning, finished with an aggregate of 285. Fallon looked very much like the new champion with a total of 283, but Thompson, the holder of the title, had still to be reckoned with. Playing with no sign of nerves and producing his very best form, he went on to win at 281. It really was a great triumph. His wife was quickly on the spot to congratulate him. Certainly a great and popular champion. As Honorary Air Commodore of number 500 County of Kent Squadron, Royal Auxiliary Air Force, the Prime Minister visited West Malling. The Cooper Trophy, which he was to present, is an annual award to the squadron which has made the best progress in all-round efficiency. Sir Anthony, who paid a glowing tribute to the RAAF, closely inspected one of the squadron's Meteor jets. Test runs by Mr. Donald Campbell in his new Bluebird were watched by his wife and Lady Campbell at Ullswater. Bluebird travelled at speed. He reached 185 on one trial run, certainly a good augury for his official attack on the world water speed record of 178.49. French-built but powered by a British engine, this Mystère 4 was the aircraft flown by Madame Jacqueline Auriol in her airspeed bid. The daughter-in-law of France's former president is a famous airwoman, and she now set out at Bretigny to fly faster than any woman had flown before. Her speed awaits confirmation, but she's reported to have beaten the existing record figure of 674 by over 9 miles an hour. Honours of Palace investiture included a knighthood for Captain Thompson, Commodore of the Cunard Line. Dr. Wan, the Bishop of London, received the KCVO, Knight Commander of the Royal Victorian Order. Sir William Roots was made a Knight Grand Cross of the Order of the British Empire. And General Sir Gerald Templar, presently to be Chief of the Imperial General Staff, received the GCB. The new course and other alterations made Royal Ascot different this year. Because of the rail strike, it had been postponed too, but the weather could not have been better on the new date. Witness the sunshades. The provision of a creche was another innovation. It's smart to go to Ascot, but you don't have to watch the racing. The opening day was a glorious opportunity for the parade of fashion, and full advantage was taken of it. The Queen, attended by the Duke of Norfolk, went with Princess Margaret to the paddock. There was no royal drive along the course, but it was Royal Ascot just the same. There was a field of 15 for the big race of the day, the Ascot Stakes, and keen excitement prevailed as starting time approached. This handicap for 3-year-olds and upwards is a 2.5 mile event. An early lead was taken by Crossmount, who was followed by Palace Guard, Manus and Corridalis. In the back stretch now, it's Palace Guard in front, but Little Cloud, Romney Legend, Prescription and Harwin are well up. In the straight, it was seen that a terrific finish was in store. Little Cloud, Romney Legend, Prescription. Which was it going to be? Then Wildnod challenged the lot. There he goes, number 16, this side, to win at 25-1 from Prescription and Romney Legend in a photo finish. Over 7,000 guests assembled for the first Buckingham Palace garden party of the season. It was a glittering social occasion during which many people were presented. The Queen, who was wearing a dress of white silk shantung with a design of moss roses, later mingled with her guests, as did the other members of the royal family. With the temperature in the 80s, the Queen Mother sought shade beneath a parasol and a wide-brimmed hat, while overseas visitors expressed their delight at this English heat wave. A coolie hat was Princess Margaret's answer to the sun. Guests in uniform must have envied the cool summer fashions all around them. The services rubbed shoulders with cabinet ministers, diplomats, debutantes, and stage and screen personalities. Among them, enjoying this delightful occasion, were Anna Neagle and her husband, Herbert Wilcox. Over 250,000 Catholics marched through Brussels to protest against a government bill for school reform. A threat to cut the subsidy to Catholic schools has aroused countrywide unrest, for it affects almost every section of the Belgian community. Thousands watching this parade were clearly in sympathy with the demonstrators. Later reports imply that opposition against the government is now manifest among the trade unions.